Hello, Math 3 students. Today we are going to continue on our journey of reviewing different topics to prepare for the SAT. So today, the first topic we're going to be going over is how to write a equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So one thing that you want to be familiar with is, well, actually I guess two equations you really should know for this is the slope formula. So to do slope, you do y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Then slope-intercept form, that is hopefully something that looks familiar to you, y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So here they gave us a chart, and they're asking for us to come up with the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So the first thing I would recommend doing is identifying the slope. So I'd go ahead and label x1, y1, x2, y2. You really could pick any 2 points from this chart. I just picked the first two. All right. And then we're going to go ahead and use our slope formula. So we're going to do our y2, which in this case is 2, minus y1, which in this case is negative 1. And then we got x2 minus x1. So we're going to do 1 minus 0. So that is going to give us 3 over 1, which gives us 3 as our slope. All right. So that tells us that in our formula here, we're going to put a 3 in for m. Now, the next thing we have to be able to find is b. Okay. Now, there's kind of an easy problem and a hard problem in terms of finding b. In this case, this first problem is an easy one, and the reason for that is they just straight up gave us b in the chart. B is your y-intercept, and y-intercepts occur when x equals 0, okay? And if you look here, the first point they gave us was a y-intercept. So this means that our b is just negative 1. Now, if they don't straight up give you your b, you're going to have to go ahead and solve for it, and we'll do a couple problems like that. But for this one, it's nice and easy. We do y equals, and then our m is 3, and our b is negative 1. So it'd be y equals 3x minus 1. All right, so let's go ahead and try another one here. All right, so again, they gave us a chart, and they want us to get it in slope-intercept form. All right, so let's go ahead and first solve for slope. So to remind you, slope is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So let's go ahead and identify our x1, y1, x2, y2. So x1, y1, x2, and y2. All right. So go ahead, plug that in, and I want you to go ahead and solve for the slope of this linear function. So to find the slope here, we're going to go ahead and do y2, which is negative 2, minus y1, which is 1, all over our x2, which is 2, minus our x1, which is 1. So we end up with a negative 3 all over 1, which means that our slope is negative 3. Now, unfortunately, this is one of the more challenging problems because they did not give us our y-intercept in the chart. So there is quite a few different ways to go about finding the y-intercept, but what we're going to do is we're going to just use our y equals mx plus b formula. And we're going to plug in for m, and we're going to pick a random point from this chart, plug in, plug in for x and y, and then that will allow us to solve for b, okay? So we know that our m is negative 3, and then let's just pick a random point from the chart. So why don't we just pick 1, 1? Okay, so that means I'm going to plug a 1 in for my x and a 1 in for my y. So I end up with 1 equals negative 3 times 1 plus b. So I get 1 equals negative 3 plus b. I'm going to add 3 to both sides to solve for b, and I get that b is 4. So now I know what my y-intercept is. All right, we have that m is negative 3, and we have that b is 4. So at this point, we can go ahead and get our equation here. Y equals m, which is negative 3, and then plus b, which is 4. So this would be our linear equation. All right. Next one here. We're going to go ahead and first, it's the exact same question they've been asking us. They want us to figure out the equation of this linear function. So let's go ahead, x1, y1, x2, y2. So go ahead. I want you to calculate the slope here. So to calculate the slope, we're going to do y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. So we get negative 8 over 4, which is going to give us negative 2. Again, they did not straight up give us the y-intercept, so we're going to have to go ahead and plug in here. So we're going to use y equals mx plus b. We know what our m is. They told us that m, or they didn't tell us, we calculated, that m is negative 2. All right. And we can pick a random point from here and plug in for x and y. So we'll just use our first one, which is negative 3, 1. And we're going to plug this in for x, and we're going to plug this in for y. So we get 1 equals negative 2 times negative 3 plus b. So go ahead and solve for b. So we get 1 equals 6 plus b minus 6. We get that b is negative 5. So if m equals negative 2 and b equals negative 5, what is the equation of our line in slope-intercept form? So that is going to be y equals negative 2x minus 5. All right. So this next question is actually pretty easy. It just says, what's the slope of a line that passes through the points 9, 1 and 10, negative 1? So it's quite literally just asking for you to calculate slope. Again, the slope formula is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. I do highly recommend that you label them x1, y1, x2, y2. I know it kind of gets annoying. People don't like to do it, but I promise you it's going to help you from making silly errors. So we go ahead and we plug in. We're going to do negative 1 minus 1 all over 10 minus 9. So that's going to give us a negative 2 over 1, which gives us our slope of negative 2. All right. Now, you have to make sure that you're careful of paying attention to what they're asking for. This one just asked for the slope. If they had asked for the equation in y equals mx plus b, we'd have to go ahead and plug in m, plug in a point, and solve for b. But we didn't have to do that here. All right. So the next one, being able to determine if lines are perpendicular or parallel or neither. All right. Or the same line for that matter. So when you have a parallel line, so parallel lines have the same slope, but a different y-intercept. All right. So like an example of this would be like y equals 5x plus 2 and y equals 5x minus 8, right? They've got that same slope, but a different y-intercept there. Then, let's see, we have the same line. So you've got the same line when you have the same slope and the same y-intercept. So an example of this would be y equals negative 8x plus 1. Y equals negative 8x plus 1, right? Same slope, same y-intercept. Then we have perpendicular. All right. So you get a perpendicular line when the slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other. So an example of this, let's say we had y equals 1/3 x plus 5, all right? An opposite reciprocal of this slope would be if we flipped it. So it'd be 3/1, and then you got to slap or change the sign of it, really. So if it's positive, it's going to become negative. So an opposite reciprocal slope would be -3. So we'd get y equals -3x. And your y-intercept's pretty irrelevant. It just really matters with the slope. So I guess actually -5 might be confusing. We could say it's like +8. Another example. Let's say we had y equals -5/8 x plus 6, right? So if this is our slope, we need the opposite reciprocal of it. So we're going to do 8/5. And then it's negative to begin with, so now we want positive. So y equals 8/5 x. And the y-intercept doesn't really matter there. All right, so remember, for perpendicular, you need to be, you need the opposite reciprocal, okay? So basically, in order to determine all of this information on the slopes, you have to get your equation into y equals mx plus b, okay? So looking at this guy here, we're going to go ahead and work to get him into y equals mx plus b. So we got 3y minus 2x equals -18. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring my 2x over. And I get 3y equals 2x minus 18. And I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to get the y by itself. So I get a line with a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of 6. So this is my first line in y equals mx plus b. So now let's go ahead. We're going to do this other line, which is y minus 2/3 minus 9. So y minus 2/3 x equals -9. So we need to get this in y equals mx plus b. This one actually isn't too bad. So we get y equals 2/3 x minus 9. All right. So if we look at these two lines, right, we have to ask, okay, like, do we have the same slope, negative reciprocal slopes? What's going on here? So if we look, we have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. So if we go back to our little chart here, if we've got same slope, different y-intercepts, that means that we've got a parallel set of lines. All right. Let's go ahead and try this next one here. So fortunately for us, this first line is already in y equals mx plus b. We know that the slope is 1/6, the y-intercept is 5. Now let's take a look at this guy. We got to get him in y equals mx plus b. So we got y minus 1/6 x equals 5. So we're going to add 1/6 x to both sides. We get y equals 1/6 x plus 5. So if we look, these lines have the same slope and they have the same y-intercept. All right, so what does that mean? If we got same slope, same y-intercept. If we got same slope, same y-intercept, we've got the same line. All right. All right, let's continue on here. So we got to get this guy in y equals mx plus b. All right, so I'm going to add 3/2 to both sides. So I get y equals 3/2 x plus 6. All right, and then we've got this guy here. We've got 3y minus 2x equals 9. We're going to add 2x. We get 3y equals 2x plus 9 divided by 3. So we get y equals 2/3 x plus 3. All right, so now we have to compare this line to this line here, okay? Now this one's kind of tricky. Looking at these two lines, the slopes almost look like opposite reciprocals of each other. They actually are just straight up reciprocals of each other, but in order to be perpendicular, they need to be opposite. So like one needs to be positive and one needs to be negative. So because of that, these actually are neither parallel nor perpendicular. All right. Last one here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this guy here. We've got 16y minus 20x equals negative 96. So the first thing we need to do here is solve for y. So I'm going to add 20x to both sides. And I get 16y equals 20x minus 96. And I'm going to go ahead and divide everything by 16. All right. So really, you could do this in your head, but I'll just show you all how to do it on a calculator. You do 20 divided by 16, and it's going to help you out if you put it in fraction form. So we end up with 4/5, no, not 4/5, sorry, 5/4 x, and then negative 96 divided by 16 gives me a negative 6. All right. Now my second line is already in y equals mx plus b, so we don't have any work to do there. So obviously we don't have same slope, so it's not parallel and it's not the same line. Now if we look, these are what we would call opposite reciprocals of each other, right? We've got negative 4/5, and if I were to flip-flop this, I get 5/4, and then you switch the sign, so now it's positive, and that's what we've got going on right there. So these guys are going to be perpendicular.